My fiance refuses to sit in my car's front seat because of my ex. Now she's treating me like a chauffeur, and I'm wondering if I'm the problem. Hi, everyone. I'm 27mm, engaged to my fiance, 26F. And while we're preparing for our wedding, something recently came up that's left me confused and conflicted. I want to know if I'm in the wrong here or if her reaction is unreasonable. Here's the issue. My fiance refuses to sit in the front seat of my car because my ex used to sit there. She says it makes her uncomfortable and feels like she's taking what someone else's. Instead, she insists on sitting in the back seat whenever we go somewhere, which honestly feels strange to me, like I'm her chauffeur. I offered to sell the car if it truly bothers her, but she told me not to because it would feel like she's forcing me to do something. However, she still won't sit in the front seat and avoids interacting with anything related to my past relationships. This is part of a bigger pattern. She's mentioned multiple times that she doesn't want to do things I've done with my ex, like cuddling on the couch during a movie or visiting places I've been to before. I've tried to be understanding of her feelings, but I'm starting to feel like I'm being held responsible for my past, which I can't change. It's also confusing because she keeps in touch with her own ex, occasionally texting or calling him, which I have no issue with as I trust her. Whenever these situations come up, she tends to withdraw emotionally, avoiding physical affection, not saying goodnight, or being distant. While I love her and want to work through this, I'm starting to feel like I'm walking on eggshells around her emotions, especially when they're tied to things I can't control, like my past. My fiance refuses to sit in the front seat of my car because my ex sat there and avoids doing things I did with my ex. I offered to sell the car, but she doesn't want me to, even though she won't engage with it. Am I the a-hole for not selling the car and thinking her behavior is unreasonable? Update 1. Alright, so here's what went down. After sitting on this for a few days, I realized I couldn't keep letting the whole car situation and her other rules fester in my head. It was starting to feel like a ticking time bomb every time we went anywhere or even talked about plans. I decided to bring it up again, but this time I really wanted to get to the root of it. Nine. We were at home and she was scrolling through her phone on the couch. I sat down next to her and just said, "Hey, I think we really need to talk about the car thing and some other stuff that's been bothering me." She sighed, which already made me feel like I was walking into a losing battle, but she put her phone down and said, "Okay, what's up?" I told her I'm feeling like she's punishing me for my past in ways that don't make sense. I brought up how she won't sit in the front seat of the car, even though I offered to sell it. I told her it's making me feel like I'm constantly being judged for things I can't change. I also mentioned how it's confusing because she's totally fine staying in touch with her ex, yet I'm somehow stuck with this invisible red flag around my past relationships. At first, she just stared at me. Then she hit me with, "You don't understand what it's like to feel like you're living in someone else's shadow." I asked her to explain what she meant by that, and she said every time she sits in that car or hears about something I've done before, she feels like she's not special. She said it's like she's being forced to compete with someone who's not even in my life anymore. I told her I get that it's hard, but I reminded her that I'm with her, not my ex. I even said I'm willing to make changes, like selling the car, but she keeps refusing that too. Then she said something that honestly caught me off guard. She told me she doesn't want me to sell the car because it would feel like I'm only doing it because she asked me to, not because I genuinely wanted to. At that point, I didn't know what to say. I told her, "I can't win here. I'm either keeping the car and upsetting you, or I sell it. And you're still upset because you think I'm not sincere." That's when she got defensive and said, "Maybe this is just proof that we're not as compatible as we think we are." That hit me like a ton of bricks. I didn't know if she was saying that to hurt me or if she was genuinely considering whether we should even be together. I asked her if she really felt that way, and she just shrugged and said, "I don't know." She went back to scrolling on her phone after that, like we hadn't just had a huge moment. I ended up going out for a walk to clear my head. While I was walking, I started thinking about other times she's done this whole shadow of the ex thing, like how she refuses to do certain date ideas because I did them with my ex, or how she gets weird about talking about vacations I took before I even knew her. It's like she's trying to erase a part of my life that existed before we met. Here's where it gets even weirder. When I got back, she was acting totally normal, like we hadn't just had that conversation. She asked me what I wanted for dinner, and started talking about wedding plans. I was so thrown off by the switch that I just went along with it. A few days later, I decided to dig a little deeper. I asked her if she wanted to go out to dinner, and while we were eating, I brought up her ex. I casually asked if she ever felt weird about keeping in touch with him while we're engaged. She gave me this confused look and said, "Why would I? We're just friends. It's not like I'm still in love with him or anything." I asked her if she thought I was still in love with my ex, and she said, "I don't think you are, but it's not about that. It's about the feelings those things bring up for me." I told her I understand that, but it feels hypocritical for her to hold onto a friendship with her ex while expecting me to pretend mine never existed. That's when she got quiet and changed the subject. Later that night, I started wondering if this is more about her insecurities than anything I'm doing. It's like she's projecting all this stuff onto me because she's not fully secure in our relationship. But the thing is, I can't keep bending over backward to make her feel better if she's not willing to work on herself too. Now I'm sitting here wondering if this is a deal breaker. I love her, but if this is how things are now, what happens after we're married? What happens when we start building a life together and there's more baggage to deal with? Is she just going to keep putting up these walls and making me jump through hoops? I don't want to call off the wedding, but I also don't want to go into a marriage feeling like I'm walking on eggshells. At the same time, I feel guilty for even thinking that way because I know she's not doing this to hurt me. She's just dealing with her own stuff in a way that's affecting both of us. So, yeah, that's where I'm at right now. I haven't made any decisions, but I feel like something's got to give soon. I can't keep going in circles like this without some kind of resolution. If anyone has advice on how to handle this or what I should say to her next, I'm all ears. Update 2. So, a lot has happened since the last update. After sitting with everything for a few days, I realized I couldn't just let this whole situation hang over my head. The wedding is coming up fast, and the more I thought about it, the more I started feeling like we needed to figure this out before taking such a big step. I decided to bring it up again, but this time I wanted to focus on figuring out solutions instead of just rehashing the same arguments. I told her we needed to sit down and have a serious conversation about where we're heading, because I didn't feel like we were on the same page. She looked a little annoyed but agreed, so we sat at the kitchen table and laid it all out. I started by telling her that I've been feeling stuck. I said I love her and want to move forward with the wedding, but I can't do that if these unresolved issues keep coming up. I told her it's not just about the car or my past. It's about how her actions make me feel like I'm constantly being judged or like I'm not doing enough to make her feel secure. She listened, but when I finished, she hit me with, "I just don't think you get how much this bothers me." I asked her to help me understand better because, from my perspective, it feels like she's putting rules in place that don't make sense. I brought up how she keeps in touch with her ex while acting like my past is this huge problem. She got defensive and said, "It's not the same thing. My ex isn't a threat to us. He's just someone I talk to once in a while." I told her I don't think my ex is a threat either, especially since I haven't talked to her in years. She paused for a moment and then said, "It's not about your ex as a person. It's about the memories and the emotions tied to those things. Every time I see that car or hear about something you did with her, it feels like there's a part of your life I can't touch." I told her I get that to a point, but I also asked her if she's considered how unfair that feels to me. I said, "You're asking me to erase parts of my life while keeping parts of yours that involve your ex. That's a double standard, and it's starting to feel like I'm always the one who has to compromise." She didn't say much after that, and the conversation kind of fizzled out. I honestly thought we were at a standstill again, but a few days later, something happened that completely changed how I see this whole situation. We were at her mom's house for dinner, and her mom brought out an old photo album. It had pictures from my fiance's high school and college days, and I noticed a couple of pictures of her with her ex. Nothing crazy, just group photos where he happened to be there too. Her mom started flipping through them and laughing about old memories, and my fiance looked super uncomfortable. She tried to change the subject, but her mom kept going. At one point, her mom mentioned a trip they all went on together, including her ex. My fiance blurted out, "Can we not talk about that right now?" Everyone went quiet, and her mom just kind of awkwardly moved on. On the way home, I asked her why she got so upset. She said it was embarrassing to have her ex brought up in front of me. I told her I wasn't upset about it. I actually thought it was kind of funny because everyone has a past. She didn't respond for a while, but then she said, I don't like being reminded of it. It feels like it takes away from what we have now. That was a light bulb moment for me. I realized this might not just be about my past, it could also be about how she feels about her own. Maybe she's projecting her insecurities onto me because she doesn't know how to deal with her own feelings about her ex or her history. The next day, I decided to test this theory. I brought up the idea of going to therapy together. I told her it might help us work through these feelings and understand each other better. To my surprise, she didn't immediately shut it down. She said, I'll think about it, which is the most open she's been to addressing this in a productive way. But then things took another turn. That night, I got a DM on Instagram from a guy I didn't recognize. He said he was my fiance's ex and that he wanted to warn me about something. At first, I thought it was some kind of prank, but curiosity got the better of me, so I replied and asked him what he meant. He said, just be careful. She has a habit of rewriting history to suit her feelings. I was floored. I didn't know if he was just being bitter or if there was some truth to what he was saying. I asked him to explain, and he said that during their relationship, she would often get upset about things from his past and make it a huge deal. He said she even accused him of still being in love with someone he dated years before they met, even though he'd cut off contact with that person. Now I'm starting to see a pattern, and it's honestly making me question everything. If she's done this before, is this just how she handles relationships? Is she always going to find something in my past to fixate on? I haven't brought this up to her yet because I don't want to jump to conclusions, but it's definitely making me think. I don't know if I should bring it up at all or just focus on moving forward with therapy. Part of me wants to give her the benefit of the doubt, but another part of me feels like this is a red flag I can't ignore. For now, I'm trying to take it one step at a time. We're supposed to meet with a therapist next week, assuming she doesn't back out. I'm hoping that'll give us some clarity, but honestly, I'm starting to wonder if this is even fixable. Update 3. All right, this will probably be the last update because I've finally made a decision about all of this. A lot has happened since the second update, and I'm honestly still processing everything, but I think I'm at peace with how things turned out. So, after my fiance agreed to try therapy, we went to our first session. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I went in with an open mind, hoping we could make some progress. The therapist asked us to talk about why we were there, and my fiance started by saying she felt like she was constantly being compared to my ex, even if I wasn't doing it directly. She said the car, the stories I've told about my past, and even certain habits of mine made her feel like she was living in someone else's shadow. When it was my turn, I explained that while I understand her feelings, I felt like I was being unfairly judged for things I couldn't control. I told the therapist that her refusal to sit in the car's front seat or do things I've done before with my ex made me feel like I was constantly failing her, even though I'm trying to make her my priority. The therapist asked some follow-up questions, and that's when my fiance said something that completely changed how I saw her. She said, it's not just about him. I've always felt like I'm not good enough for the people I care about. She went on to explain that this insecurity didn't start with me or even with her ex. It's something she's struggled with her whole life. She said she's always felt like she had to prove she was special or different to the people she loves, or else she'd be replaced. Hearing her say that broke my heart a little. I realized this wasn't just about me or my past. This was something much deeper that she hadn't fully dealt with. The therapist suggested we work on building trust and communication, and that my fiance might benefit from individual therapy to address some of her insecurities. After the session, I felt hopeful. It seemed like we were finally on the same page and ready to work on things together. But then, 2 days later, everything unraveled. I came home from work to find her sitting on the couch with her laptop open, crying. I asked her what was wrong, and she hesitated before saying, I don't think I can do this. She told me she loved me and wanted to marry me, but she didn't know if she could ever fully let go of her insecurities. She said, you deserve someone who doesn't make you feel like you're always walking on eggshells. Slam that! I told her we could work through it together, but she shook her head and said, I think this is bigger than us. She admitted that the idea of going to therapy scared her because it meant confronting things she's been avoiding for years. She said she wasn't ready to do that and didn't think it was fair to keep dragging me into her unresolved issues. I was stunned. I didn't know whether to try to convince her to stay or just let her go. She said she needed some space to figure things out and asked if we could take a break. At first, I was angry. It felt like she was giving up without really trying. But after thinking about it, I realized she might be right. We've been apart for about a week now, and in that time, I've done a lot of reflecting. I've realized that as much as I love her, this relationship has been draining for both of us. Her insecurities aren't something I can fix, and it's not fair to either of us to keep pretending like they'll go away on their own. She called me yesterday and said she's decided to move back in with her mom for a while. She said she still loves me but doesn't think she's in a place to be a good partner right now. I told her I understood and that I hope she takes the time she needs to work on herself. We decided to call off the wedding, and while it hurts, I think it's the right choice. I'm not angry with her, and I don't regret the time we spent together. I truly hope she finds peace and learns to love herself the way she deserves. As for me, I'm taking this as a chance to focus on myself and figure out what I want moving forward. So, yeah, that's where things stand. It's not the happy ending I was hoping for, but maybe it's the one we both need right now. Thanks to everyone who shared advice and helped me see things more clearly.